Alright, in this video we're going to take a look at finding missing sides in right triangles using trigonometry that we just talked about, using the trigonometric ratios. So if you notice, the first thing up here says make sure your calculator is in degree mode. Okay, even if you're using one of the apps that we've talked about, you need to do this. Right? So if you go to mode, the third option down here is between radian and degree, and if you notice, radian is actually highlighted on mine right now, so I'm going to actually have to go over to degree and press enter. Okay, that's how we make sure that our calculator is in degree mode. Right, so even if you're using an app, you have to make sure that the calculator is in degree mode like this. Right, so now let's try some of these problems. Now, I've got the list of steps that we're going to use here typed out, and as we talk about each one, we're going to do that in this example problem here. So the first thing that we want to do, always, 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 is label the sides of the triangle and hypotenuse. Now, for these problems, we only need to label the sides that have information on them. Okay, so this bottom here has nothing, no variable, no number. We don't need to label it. All I care about labeling is the x and the 19. So I want to do that with respect to the angle that I'm given. So with respect to this 28-degree angle, the x is the opposite side. Right? It's not touching that angle, so it's opposite. Then the 19 is the hypotenuse. So once we have the triangle labeled, we want to choose the appropriate trig function. Now what that means is we have to choose whether we're going to use sine, cosine, or tangent. Now to do that, we want to look at the information that we have. We have the opposite side and the hypotenuse. So if we remember, okay, our so ka toa, the trig function that deals with the opposite side and the hypotenuse is sine. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So that's the trig function that I'm going to use. I'm going to use sine. Now, the way that we set up our equation then, we're going to say sine, or whatever trig function we're using, of the angle. So sine of 28 degrees. In the examples that we did in the last video, we just used a letter here. Like if this was angle A, we said sine of A. Well, now we have angle measures, so we can put sine of 28 degrees equals, and then we use this ratio, opposite over hypotenuse. So here, we will have x over 19. All right? So the last step is to solve for the variable. So if I'm dividing x by 19, to undo that, to get x by itself, I would just multiply both sides by 19. That'll cancel out the 19s over here, and we will just get 19 times the sine 28 degrees equals x. And this we can put into the calculator. Okay, so this is why it was important to make sure that our calculator was in degree mode, because we're using degrees here. So if I go to the calculator, I can type that in, 19 times, and now on the calculator, there are special buttons for sine, cosine, and tangent. Right? That's how important these trig functions are. So I'm just going to use my button for sine, and since I already put my calculator in degree mode, I can just say 19 times the sine of 28, like that, and hit enter. Now, for all of these problems, we are going to round to the nearest tenth. All right, so when we're doing these on Edge Elastic, it's going to be important that we round correctly. All right? So to round this number to the nearest tenth, right, tenth is 1 decimal place, I would actually look at the second number. Since this is less than 5, I do not round this up. So this rounded to the nearest tenth would be 8.9. So x equals 8.9 in this case. That's the length of this side of the triangle. All right. let's try another one. So here, again, with respect to this angle here, we're told this is a 21-degree angle. I want to label my sides. So again, I don't have to label this side since I don't care about it. There's nothing there. This side, this leg that's part of that angle would be the adjacent side. And then the 26, since it is opposite the right angle, would be the hypotenuse. So the trig function that deals with adjacent and hypotenuse, if we're thinking again, so, ka, toa, that's cosine. So my setup here is going to be cosine of my angle, so cosine of 21 degrees, equals adjacent over hypotenuse, x over 26. So again, to get x by itself, I'm just going to multiply both sides by 26. Those will cancel, and we can type 26 times the cosine of 21 degrees into the calculator. So 26 times the cosine, oops, I did that backwards, didn't I? No, I didn't. 26 times the cosine of 21. And we get 24.27. So again, to round to the nearest tenth, we want to look at the second number after the decimal that is greater than 4, or it's 5 or greater. So this would actually round to 24.3. So the length of this side right here is 24.3. Let's do a couple more examples here. So in this next one, again, I'll label the sides. So with respect to this 33-degree angle, this would be the opposite side, and this would be the hypotenuse. So if we're thinking so, ka, toa, the opposite and hypotenuse, the trig function that deals with opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So sine of 33 degrees equals opposite over hypotenuse. So in this case, we're going to have equals 15 over x. Okay, so it's important that we remember those ratios. So sine is always opposite over hypotenuse. We don't just automatically put the x in the numerator. Okay, and in this case, the x goes in the denominator because sine is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So now we need to solve this for x. Well, the first thing I want to do is get x out of the denominator. If we end up with something like this, the first thing we want to do is multiply x to both sides of the equation. Right, that'll cancel out the x's over here, and we'll have x times the sine of 33 equals 15. Now, one more step to solve for x, I want to divide both sides by the sine of 33. Okay? Dividing is how we undo multiplication. So divide by the sine of 33. These will cancel out over here. We'll get x equals 15 over, or divided by, the sine of 33. And again, we are finally to the point now where we can put that into the calculator. So 15 divided by the sine of 33 gets me 27.5 if we're rounding to the nearest tenth. since this is less than 5, this would stay 5. So, final answer here, our missing side, x equals 27.5. Right. So, if we end up with x in the numerator when we set up our equation, all we need to do is multiply both sides by the denominator to get x by itself. But if we end up with x in the denominator, we have 2 steps. We need to multiply the x over to the left side and then divide both sides by the trig function. Okay? Let's do one more of those real quick. So let's look at this triangle. So we've got this 72-degree angle here. Right? I shouldn't have drawn over it like that. So with respect to this angle, the 5 is the opposite side, and then the x is the adjacent side. Okay? This side, which we aren't going to label here, would be the hypotenuse because it's opposite the right angle. So the trig function that we would use if we're dealing with opposite and adjacent is tangent. So my setup is going to be tangent of the angle equals opposite over adjacent. So here's another one where we end up with x in the denominator. So we need to multiply both sides by x first. That'll cancel the x's out here. And then divide both sides by the tangent of 72. Right, so we will end up with x equals 25 divided by the tangent of 72. Right, so we can put that into the calculator. 25 divided by the tangent of 72. And that gets me 0.1. This will not round up because this value is less than 5. So, our missing side here, x equals 8.1. Okay? So, I want you guys to practice a few of these on elastic. So, I guess before you do that, remember that your assignment for today is to take a picture of your notes and upload them to Schoology. Right? I want to see that you're taking notes on these videos. And then tomorrow, your assignment will be to practice some of these on Schoology. Again, please send me questions that you have. Either remind or email, or we could set up a Google Meet chat if you want to chat through video. All right? Send me questions.